On today's episode of What's Going On with Shipping, President Biden has decided to pause pending approvals of liquefied natural gas export projects. I'm your host, Sal Mercogliano. Welcome to today's episode. So President Biden has decided to hold off on further approval of plans to build LNG, liquefied natural gas export facilities. Now, this comes at a time when the world's need on LNG is increasing and the United States is set to become the largest exporter of liquefied natural gas. We've got the Houthi in the Red Sea now targeting tankers. 2 tankers hit today. This is a period of time when the president has decided to curtail the growth of American energy exports. We're going to look at this story, break it down, and also examine what the implication is for global shipping. If you're new to the channel, hey, take a moment, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you'll be alerted about new videos as they come out. So this is the president's announcement out of the White House. I just want to read a couple of comments here on it. In every corner of the country and the world, the people are suffering the devastating toll of climate change. So climate change is the #1 issue. From day one, my administration has set the United States on the unprecedented course to tackle the climate crisis at home and abroad. Goes on, my administration is announcing today a temporary pause on pending decisions of liquefied natural gas exports with the exception of unanticipated and immediate national security emergencies. During this period, we will take a hard look at the impacts of LNG exports on energy costs, American energy security, and our environment. This pause on new LNG approvals sees the climate crisis for what it is, the existential threat of our time. He then gets very political. While MAGA Republicans willfully deny the urgency of the climate crisis, condemning the American people to a dangerous future, my administration will not be complacent. We will not cede to special interests. Then he goes on, we will heed the call of young people in frontline communities who are using their voices to demand action. So we saw recently a story just came out in the New York Times about a 25-year-old activist who came to the White House and talked to the president. So while special interests are not being played, 25-year-olds obviously are having a play here in this. So very political statement by the White House about this. What does this mean going forward? That's what we're going to look at today. So let's go ahead and delve into this. So here's the story out on GCaptain via Reuters. Biden pauses the LNG export approvals project. So this is obviously a big issue. Specifically, he's looking at the Department of Energy, which conducts reviews for it. Well, also, the Maritime Administration conducts reviews on the export facilities, but specifically, he's looking at DOE and pausing them in their look at the creation of these facilities. So what does this mean? Well, here's the Department of Energy. This is their EIA. This is the Energy Information Agency. They were back in November looking at the fact that LNG export capacity in North America is likely to double through 2027. Right now, we're sitting at about 12 billion cubic feet per day. That's the amount of natural gas export capacity, not how much we export, but capacity we have. And you'll see here in blue, these are the projects that are going to be put on hold. Port Arthur, Rio Grande, Plaquemines, which is part of the growth of that facility, Corpus Christi Stage 3, and Golden Pass. This is the EIA breaking down how much natural gas is exported. Now you got to go back into the 70s and 80s, and you're looking at maybe about 54,000 million cubic feet. So again, we're talking about how much million cubic feet we're exporting. But where you see it really start to pick up is in the early 2000s, but in particularly in 2016. In 2016 is where we see this natural gas. And natural gas is usually pipelined to communities. And in certain wells for a long time where natural gas wasn't needed or couldn't be harnessed, it was just burned off, the big flames you would see coming off. But then the process came to liquefy it, which means supercooling it down to about minus 165 degrees Celsius, really supercooling it and getting it cold, not pressurizing, but cooling it. And now you can basically load it onto ships. And you see how this absolutely took off with over 6 million cubic feet of gas being exported. If you come over here to the export by vessels, you'll see in 2013, there's none being exported by vessel. And then all of a sudden it grows so that now we're sitting here at 3.8 million cubic feet being exported. So a huge amount that is going out by vessel, and we see that increasing over time. Now, at the same time, we're having issues regarding liquefied natural gas being shipped out by the other major exporters, Qatar, Australia, and Russia. So Qatar is having this, or Qatar, depending on how you pronounce this, Qatar is having the issue because it's a huge exporter, but it has to deal with the issue that a lot of its LNG was sailing through the Bab el-Mandab into the Red Sea heading to Europe. Well, now because of Houthi attacks and because of the high cost of war risk insurance, those ships are heading around Africa, which means that shipments of LNG that were heading to Spain, for example, are now going to be delayed. Going on here, the U.S. in January had shattered the export records. We actually topped what Qatar and Australia were doing. And if you look at the global numbers here, U.S. was a standout in global LNG supply growth in 2023, according to Alex Mutton, the director of global gas and LNG research at Rapid Energy Group, of the rise of 8.6 million metric tons leaving U.S. terminals in December. So we were not just the number one, but we were expanding, we were growing. And now that's going to be curtailed because of this. Add to it, LNG exports are being not just affected by Suez, but also Panama. Because of the low water levels in the Panama Canal, we're only getting 2/3 of the ships through the Panama Canal. That means that American ships are being rerouted. In the past, the three big countries we exported LNG to was Japan, Korea, and China. But now, because of low water in the Suez Canal, we're rerouting our ships. And if you look at these numbers from November of 2023, this is from EIA, this is their monthly report. This is the latest one with the most recent information. You'll see that the top beneficiary of LNG right now is Europe. France, United Kingdom, Netherlands, Turkey all come in first through fourth, followed by South Korea, China, and Japan. So U.S. LNG is not heading so much through the Panama Canal and heading to Asia. It's heading across the Atlantic and going into Europe. Why? Well, because energy going to Europe has been cut off because of Russia-Ukraine. You have the oil price cap and the cutoff of oil heading in, but more importantly, the natural gas pipelines have been cut and severed, and so you're not getting natural gas. You were still getting LNG for a while, but largely LNG is coming from the United States and Qatar into that region. So if you pull up marine traffic and we remove all the ships except for LNG tankers, you can see where in the world LNG tankers. So where are they coming out of? Well, they're coming out of northern Russia, coming down here and heading to discharge facilities. They're coming out of the Gulf Coast of the United States. Some are heading through the Panama Canal, but a large majority of them are either heading across to Europe. They would head through the Mediterranean, through the Suez, but notice there are no LNG carriers in and around the Red Sea and the Bab el-Mandeb. They're heading south of Africa here. Coming out of Qatar, heading out into the Indian Ocean, they're heading southbound, heading toward Europe, and then Australia is providing that LNG to Japan, Korea, and China, and other countries, with more coming across the Pacific from the United States. So we're seeing a repositioning of LNG trade here as it goes on. So what does this mean going forward? Well, President Biden is taking a political decision, and he's arguing it's because of the environment. But at the same time, we're curtailing the production of liquefied natural gas. It produces a lot less emissions than coal and oil. Yes, it has residuals and there's issues associated with it, but the U.S. was poised to not just be the leader in LNG production, but to well surpass what other countries are doing. We are completely dependent on foreign ships to move our LNG for us, but now we're facing these obstructions. The U.S. now will not continue through DOE. They're going to hold up on any production facilities that we're poised to have. So that growth we saw in that chart that was going to happen is not going to happen now. That means Qatar and Australia are poised to once again surpass us and take the lead. But now with the closing of the Red Sea, or at least the curtailment of shipments through the Red Sea, again, today we just saw 2 crude oil tankers hit by the Houthi. What we're going to see is more and more ships route around Africa, meaning that energy getting to Europe is going to be slower to get there. That means you're going to need more LNG tankers. LNG tankers are some of the most expensive ships to build. There is a finite number of them, and this means it's going to become more expensive. There's going to be more demand, and LNG is going to be pulled with the low water levels in the Panama Canal, the Suez Canal not available for LNG tankers. We're seeing an entire reshuffling of energy, and I understand that the Biden administration wants to do this, with a political election coming up. They're trying to win the votes of young people, but we got to look at the overall energy needs and requirements of not just us, but Europe and Asia and other countries. So definitely a big impact coming to the LNG trade. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, hey, take a moment, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you'll be alerted about new videos as they come out. Give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, share it across social media, and if you can, support the page. How do you do that? Well, you can build an LNG facility that will be approved by the U.S. government. But if you can't do that, hey, you can support the page by hitting the super thanks button down below or heading on over to Patreon and becoming a monthly or yearly subscriber. Until the next video, this is Sal, signing off.